Music. Music has always been important to me, as long as I can remember. Some of my first memories were of music, and well, it's always been there. It's just something I've never really questioned. Not until recently. At Christmas time, I was down visiting my family in Niagara, and my sister remembered that when we were kids, I always had to listen to music to fall asleep, at least when we were teenagers. Now, that drove her crazy. She had trouble sleeping as a result of it, but I probably didn't care because we were teenagers and she was my little sister. But that got me to thinking. I needed that to fall asleep. It was that important to me. Music was with me all the time back then. And this was a time before we had iPods and MP3s or any of that stuff. So I was carrying around a Walkman with a bunch of cassettes. And that's how I was listening to music. I was also listening on a stereo at home, of course, but mostly I was listening in my Walkman. And I'm just trying to think. When I was in grade 7 or 8, some of the earliest music I remember somebody introducing me to, and this was aside from Kiss in the 70s. Somebody, of course, listened to Kiss. Everybody listened to Kiss back then. We liked the makeup. But when I got into about grade 7 or 8, one of my friends introduced me to glam metal. Bands like Motley Crue, Poison, bands like that. And I was kind of into that for a while. It was, because it was the first sort of real rebellious music I listened to. And it wasn't until I got into high school that I really discovered the music that I think probably was my music. And that was the 80s. And so New Wave was big and punk rock was big. And one of the first records I remember somebody introducing me to was London Calling by The Clash. And that just changed everything for me. It was a new way of approaching music that I hadn't really thought of before. And it was just so interesting, and there were so many new and weird and interesting sounds and things like punk and new wave. So I still listen to bands like The Smiths, Depeche Mode, all of that kind of stuff. Even the Sex Pistols once in a while, but mostly The Clash, if I'm listening to punk. And that really got me through some difficult times in high school, having that music to listen to. I was at times I was bullied in high school, and I felt like sometimes my only friend was the music that I had. So it was incredibly important to me then. When I went on to university, I bonded with some of my first friends at university over music. We'd go to see bands together. My best friend Tristan and I were both into a band called The Alarm, and that's kind of how we first got talking. Was we started talking about this band. And anyway, he went on to be in bands that toured across the country. I, of course, went on to play music mostly for pleasure, but also, as it turns out, professionally, as I teach guitar to all of you. When I went away to Japan for 4 years, the first few months, of course, were rough. Anybody who's moved to another country knows this. It may even be you. And I had a lot of homesickness. And there was this record called Being There by Wilco that really got me through that time. I listened to a lot of that record whenever I felt homesick. Even though it's an American record, it's not a Canadian record, it still meant a lot to me. It was the music. And so really, I mean, it's been something that's been with me. It's seen me through hard times, through heartbreak, through breakups, through happy times. Of course, you put on music, but even more so when I felt alone, I've always had music there to comfort me, to bring me up, to inspire me. It's really been a guiding force in my life, and I'm thankful that music exists.